So here's the interesting thing, John. The first marriage I broke up because the excuse I gave back then was we're not compatible. My husband wasn't as driven as I was, but the truth was I was cheating a lot. And I was cheating a lot because I had my own childhood traumas that led me to seeking constant approval, seeking constant attention. And nobody ever was good enough. And everybody around me, including my husband back then, through my first marriage, was having a missing piece within themselves. And the truth, John, I had a missing piece within myself.
Olga, at what stage in your life did you find yourself? What relationship broke you to discover yourself?
Oh, wow, John, that is a fantastic question. Well, we don't have to go far because actually that was my own marriage. As you might know, I got married not that long ago. I haven't been married for 20 years. But within that time that we are together with my husband, all together, is nearly 3 years now. We both feel like it's been 30 years because of the journey we have had. In a few words, basically, we got married, we were really, really happy. And we just found out that actually we're going through infidelity issues. We found out my husband was addicted to cheating, and that was because of deep trauma. We filed for divorce, but then we had an absolutely transformative journey. We both healed a lot. We both understood our behaviors a lot. And despite we filed for divorce, we are not divorced. We actually are even happier than before. We managed to deal with triggers and fears and insecurities. And now we're just continuing to be in a real and authentic relationship.
And what was the cause of the breakup of your first marriage?
So here's the interesting thing, John. The first marriage I broke up because the excuse I gave back then was we're not compatible. My husband wasn't as driven as I was, but the truth was I was cheating a lot. And I was cheating a lot because I had my own childhood traumas that led me to seeking constant approval, seeking constant attention. And nobody ever was good enough. And everybody around me, including my husband back then, through my first marriage, was having a missing piece within themselves. And the truth, John, I had a missing piece within myself. So that's the real reason. I had a missing piece within myself, which I could not identify back then. And I was excusing myself for so many reasons why I was cheating. And of course, I had perfect excuse to get divorced. In reality, he was a fantastic husband. He was a fantastic father. But when you have a missing piece within yourself, you will always find faults within other people.
And what childhood traumas did you suffer that caused you relationship problems in your first marriage?
Oh, thank you. That is a fantastic question. And I really hope my answer will serve so many questions for so many people and actually will make them think. So let's start with the first one. First of all, my dad died before I was born. That led me to so-called daddy's issue. Means you don't have a role model for yourself as a girl when you grow up because there's no dad, right? And when you have no dad for one reason or another, or no mother, when it comes to boys growing up without a mother, you don't really know what is good and what is bad for you, what is right and what is wrong for you. So you end up shifting and looking and constantly testing and trialing until the day, decades later, you understand what's right and what's wrong. So that's the first reason. Second thing, it was me growing up with a program that I have to be a good girl. For example, my grandmother would tell me things like, oh, of course, that was not done intentionally to hurt me. That was for her a way to make me a well-behaved girl, right? So she would say things to me like, I love you because you're such a good girl. I love you when you're so tidy. I love you when you're so humble. I love when you say no when guests are offering you sweets because this way you show that you are humble. So in reality, everything what she wanted to do was with a good intention. She really wanted to raise me as a nice person. But that traumatized me every single time, because what did I learn? I cannot say what I want and I cannot have what I want, because then I'm not perceived as a good girl, right? And I have to forget about myself and I have to please other people, because this is the only way how I can be loved. And also because she was praising me a lot publicly, right? When our guests would come around and when we would go somewhere, she would say, oh, my granddaughter, she is so well-behaved girl. She comes back and she tidies up the house and she's washing dishes. So of course she was doing this praise. So I continued doing that. But that backfired, because again, I got used to that. And I got used to that I have to be praised all the time. So I would go where I would be praised, right? And ultimately, that impacted my first marriage. Was it the only relationship that was impacted? Absolutely no, Joan. There were multiple relationships after that that were impacted for the same reason. Me seeking attention, me seeking love, me seeking praise, until the day I realized, wow, what am I doing? I'm looking for confirmation and love and approval from the outside world, whilst I'm not giving that to myself. And the minute I changed that and I started giving myself the approval, myself that love, myself that attention, the whole world changed for me. The whole world changed to me, and I stopped seeking things from outside world. And I really wish your listeners right now would just start thinking to themselves, am I seeking approval from the outside world? Am I seeking love from the outside world? Because there's a very big chance that you do. I hope it answers the question, John.
And what caused you to realize that you needed to stop seeking attention from the outside world and to look within yourself for approval?
Oh, fabulous question. Well, what stopped me actually, it was me realizing that I'm going from one relationship to another, constantly find what's wrong with them. But so many people cannot be wrong. It's like we can always blame other people for whatever, right? In my case, it was lack of attention, lack of approval, lack of them feeling proud of me, right? But we can always blame other people for so many things in our lives. But so many people cannot be wrong. You got to look right at yourself in the mirror and just say, what's wrong with you? What are you not giving to yourself? What are not you saying to yourself? What are you not noticing within yourself that you seek for that within the outside world? Because the outside world will continue showing to you exactly what you don't give it to yourself. And that's why when the infidelity issue appeared in my relationship, of course, by this time I'm already a coach. I do coaching for nearly 15 years now. My first question to myself was not, why did you do that to me? Or was she any better? Because in reality, there was not one her or one she or one female. There were multiple females. There were multiple cases across the entire time before the marriage, during the marriage, and whenever, right? And there were multiple women. So my question to myself was, okay, what is he showing to me with his behavior? That I'm not priority to myself, that I'm not important to myself, and that I don't love myself. And I realized really deep inside, there was still a bit of a lack of love towards myself, a bit of lack of self-acceptance. There was massive lack of importance towards myself. Because the truth is, other people can do whatever they want. That's their life, that's their choices. But why do we attract them? Because of our traumas. And once I realized that I was hugely traumatized by my grandmother, I was hugely traumatized by the fact my dad died before I was born, and I was growing up without my dad, and then also sexual abuse from my first stepfather. That all led to me understanding that my husband came into my life so I can heal myself from those childhood traumas and stop seeking feeling important for somebody, stop seeking feeling prioritized by somebody, and prioritize myself. So that year, when I was going through healing, that was the most transformative year of my entire life. I learned so much about myself. I shifted so much. I literally feel like I came out as a brand new woman on the other side of that all.
Would you like to share the story of the sexual abuse you suffered from your first stepfather with the audience?
Sure. Well, it wasn't as big sexual abuse as some people experienced, and therefore I wouldn't say it was a massive thing. However, very often we diminish sexual abuse because it wasn't big enough. So I think it's important to share it. What happened basically, we were watching a television with my brother, myself, and my stepfather came in, and we were just lying on a bed, as you do as children, lie down on the bed watching a movie. I remember it was a Godzilla movie, right? Very scary movie at the time, of course, because Godzilla on the screen, it's whatever. And I remember he just lying from behind me, and he starts stroking me inappropriately. And at the time, I didn't feel I can say anything because, well, it's your stepdad. He's an authority. And I kind of started to shift and show I don't like it. And this is when he started kissing me. And that just felt wrong. But at the same time, I did not feel I can do anything about that. And I moved and moved, and he still kept me closer and closer. And eventually I just ran away out of the room. So in reality, it's not as bad as a girl being raped by 7 guys, or you being raped at the age of 3 by your grandfather. There are a lot worse cases than that for sure. But the reason why I did not address it for so long and why it was impacting me for so long, because it was not big enough. And when we keep something that impacts you on a big scale, but you don't think it's big enough, it traumatizes you even more, because then you neglect your feelings even more. Then you say what you felt back then is not important because you are not important. That person is more important because he was fulfilling his sexual fantasies and his needs, but you and your rights are not important. And therefore, I'm happy to share it because I know that many girls out there who, just like myself, experience something small like this that will be not even reported to police, person will be not persecuted, nothing would happen because, again, there's a family shame and all that stuff, but that will damage you for the rest of your life until the day you will learn that you are important. It just at that time, you did not have tools. You did not have the knowledge how to protect yourself. And you did not know you can protect yourself. You can say no. But now you know you can say no. And that's why it's important to understand what happened back then was something you couldn't deal with because you had no knowledge. But now you're a brand new person. You're wiser, you are older, you know so much more, and there are professionals that will help you with that. But it's a matter of saying, I want to deal with that. Even though it wasn't big, I want to deal with that. And the minute you say that, this is when huge healing will come your way, because that will just become a part of your story, not their story. Does it make sense?
It does. Yeah. You mentioned that you had a brother growing up. What's your relationship like with your brother nowadays?
So nowadays he lives in UK, which is nice, and we are there for each other. But again, very often what happens, you have family members with whom you don't stay in touch, and then you have friends who become your family members, right? Our relationship with my brother, as well as my other 2 sisters, were always quite complicated because, well, I was from my dad, who died before I was born, and my brother and my sister, they were from first stepfather, and then latest sister, she was from my second stepfather. And what happened, we had quite a big gap between myself and my latest sister, 13 years. As a result, we did not really have a good relationship or good connection in the beginning. Of course, for so many years, I was more like a mother for her because I was looking up to her. But with a brother, for years, I was holding this grudge and anger because he was there during that abuse. He was there and he didn't do anything. And I did not know I was holding on to that anger. I did not know, and trust me, John, it was eye-opening for me to figure that out only when I was dealing with what we went through with my husband. Only then, after working, well, I worked with 11 professionals across 11 months, 300 plus hours. That tells you impact. That tells you how much work I have done, right? And obviously that only in that time because of that issue. But only during that time I discovered that I was holding on to an anger towards my brother because he didn't do anything. And the reason why I was holding to that anger is because that was giving me certainty. Here is the thing, and I would like to mention that because I'm sure right now there are people who probably don't understand why they are holding on to their own pain and traumas in their childhood. What I discovered about myself, holding on to pain and anger was giving me certainty. Because I had lack of certainty, lack of safety, lack of protection, it was easier to be angry because that gave me my internal protection to myself. That gave me certainty rather than release something and then what do I hold on to, right? So when I discovered that, of course, it was beautiful discovery because I realized why my relationship with my brother was so tense, even though there was never any reason, right? But that gave me a brand new understanding, which was beautiful. And obviously it served both of us really, really well. And interestingly enough, he doesn't even remember that experience. He doesn't. It's like he was never there, but I know he was there. But it just shows how we all remember different things from our childhood. And two siblings can be in the same room. One of them will not remember one thing, another one will remember everything in detail. That's how crazy our brain is working.
True, very true. Good point. In terms of you've been married twice, you've had a number of other, romantic relationships. Do you have any children of your own? And if you do, what's your relationship like with your own children?
I do have John, yes. I have one son who is 17 and he'll be 18 in January. I was very desperate to have a child at the age of 19. You will not believe it, but seriously, it was me just saying, I so want to be a mother. I so want to be, that person who looks after something. And again, that was me looking for certainty, right? I needed something to look after. Now I understand myself more better. Back then, it was this big desire of having a baby. And with my husband back then, we obviously felt pregnant. We had a baby and I never really wanted any more children simply because I grew up in a family of 4. And I saw how my mother, she never had time for any of us. We were there growing up by ourselves. She did her best. Bless her. She really worked hard and she was there providing for us because none of her husbands really was a provider, let's put it this way. So for 6 years, my son was growing up with me, and we always had an agreement with his dad that once he turns 16, he finishes his school, he will go live with him. Because again, a boy needs a man as a role model full time for them to man up. That's what we believed in. That's what we still believe in, and that's why he's now living with his dad full time in Wakefield. It's where they reside, and he's going to college. And we actually have a beautiful relationship with my son. They are open. We can talk about anything because that's how I was raising him, that I'm here for you to talk to me whenever you need me. And you are there for me whenever I want to talk to you. Of course, everything should be age appropriate. Let's remember that as a parent. It has to be age appropriate conversations. But same time, he's a very wise teenager. Like sometimes I look at other teenagers, I'm thinking, wow, these are really troubling their parents. This one, touch wood, is really wise teenager. He's very savvy. He's very technologically advanced. He understands technology like nobody else around me, seriously. So I'm really happy and grateful I have him because probably right now, if I would have no children, I would never have a child. Simple as that. So I'm really happy I have him. He's an amazing boy. And I'm just in love with being a mother to this amazing child.
And what's the relationship like with your mom nowadays?
Oh, they're beautiful. They are beautiful. And the reason why, when I was growing up, I was resenting my mom a lot because of my grandmother's programming. She was telling me lots of stories about my mom, how she was resenting her, my grandmother, and how much trouble she brought and all that. And she was always telling me that my grandmother, she did everything to be a grandmother and how bad my mother was to her. So that obviously eventually made me almost hate my mother. And I remember at the age of 12, there's another trauma coming up here, which was really eye-opening for me. And that made massive scar in on me when I found out that at the age of 12, I said to my mother once, we had an argument. I said to her, well, wait until I'll grow up and I'll be 18. I'll go and live with my grandmother because clearly she loves me more than you do. This is when my mother, she said to me, well, no problem at all. If you want to, you can go live with her even now. But let me tell you the truth that you don't know about your grandmother. And this is when she told me that when my dad passed away, and my mom was already pregnant. She fell pregnant 2 weeks after the marriage. My grandmother did everything possible she could to push my mom to do an abortion. My grandmother never wanted me to be born at all. And now my grandmother for the last 12 years is telling me that I'm her favorite granddaughter and how much she loves me and how much she was wanting me. So that, of course, was such a shock to me when I confronted my grandmother. She was like, well, it's not like I was against you. I was against your mother being a single mother, because again, we have to remember I was born in Latvia, post-Soviet country, where being a single mother is a shame. Is a shame. It's something you don't want to do. It really is not what you would be good and looked as good citizen, let's put this way, right? So my grandma explained that she didn't want my mom to be in trouble, but did it really matter to me? It didn't. Because the bottom story was my grandmother was lying to me for the 12 years, saying I'm her favorite granddaughter, when in the first place she never really wanted me. And that was another childhood trauma which I was not aware of, again, until I start working on myself even deeper as a result of infidelity in my relationship. So with these, I just would like to say that my relationship with my mother, answering your question, is definitely much better now. We travel together, we have a good time, we call each other on a regular basis, we exchange pictures, we exchange videos. It is beautiful. But most important thing here, because I mentioned the trauma, I would like to say that whatever you're going through right now with your partner, you got to remember one thing. Your partner is there as a perfect partner for you to go back to your childhood traumas, as you heard already from my own experience, and heal them. So whatever you're going through right now with your partner, there is definitely a root cause of that in your childhood as well as in their childhood. So please be mindful, because I know this is the relationship episode, and that's why we'd like to go back to relationship here, because very often people say it's easier to get divorced and find a new partner. And I'll tell you from my own experience, yes, it's easy to leave relationship just to walk into different relationship with the same issues, because you're the one who have to heal yourself and understand what are the root causes coming from your childhood that are impacting you choosing those partners that hurt you again and again. So that's what I wanted to add.
Question here for you, for the audience's behalf. You coach clients, or you have coaching clients, I should say. How do you ensure, for example, that when you're coaching a client and they're talking about their trauma to you, that you don't allow your judgment to be muddied by the fact that you had your own childhood traumas?
So here's the thing. Coaching is a space which is strictly not judgmental and fully confidential. This is how it should be, because we are providing the safe space for our clients to work on themselves. Whenever you feel you are judging as a coach, whenever you feel you disagree, or you think it's wrong, or you think it's just not the way how it should be, you got to go back and work on yourself. Because you cannot, as a coach, bring your own opinions and your own judgment onto your client story, whatever they're going through. And John, I heard it all from partners beating up their pregnant women and whatever. Seriously, there were so many stories which I could sit there and saying, no way, they really did that to you. That's not who I am. When you train professionally, and that's the difference between those who did get qualification, those who didn't. When you don't get qualification, you still have your human part in you, because you haven't learned the skill how to detach yourself. When I listen to my clients, I don't listen to them emotionally. It might sound like, oh, that means you're a very dry person, Olga. No, I am, and I am. People know I am a very emotional person. Probably you can tell also from this interview. But when I listen to my clients, what I'm looking for are the clues and connection. It's like I'm building the matrix in my head and also on my paper, because I draw a lot when I coach, is looking for, okay, what are the root causes? Where's the connection here? What is leading to? What coming from? So that can help my clients. So it is about detaching. You got to detach yourself emotionally. So you're there to serve. When you're emotionally involved, you are judging. That's why we never really, or very rarely, I should use this word, Instead, go to our friends when we experience something as traumatic as infidelity, for example, because we are afraid of shame and judgment, right? We're afraid of shame and judgment by our own friends and our own family members. That's why so many people were coming to me even before my own experience, and we were working on that stuff. And of course, now having my own experience, which was on a grand scale, I'm able to emphasize with them even more. And I can just simply say, I get you. And the reason why I get you, because I've been on the same journey. And I can share a little bit of my experience, but again, it is never about me. It is always 100% about my client, unless they need a little bit of extra help with a story. And then it's either my own experience or my client experience. And those stories very often help my clients to relate, again, detach from their own experiences and see different perspectives. So answering your question, John, I shouldn't, and I'm not, because I learned how to detach. And again, that's something that differentiates those people who went through qualifications versus those who didn't. And they just think to themselves, I'm a good listener. People come to get help from me. I think I can be a coach. You can be a coach. There's a potential for so many people to be a coach, but you got to qualify, because through qualification, you gain all these extra skills that you need to be truly effective coach, not just a good coach.
I have more questions here for you, Olga. The first one is, looking back at your past, what circumstances would you consider as character building blocks that have made the person you are today?
John, an entire life. An entire life, because we learn every single day. We learn from good days and we learn from bad days. We learn from massive experience. We learn from small experience. So I can just simply say here, my entire life was a character building. And I'm super mega grateful for absolutely every experience that happened in my life, because it helps me to be a better version of myself today and the best coach I can be for my clients.
Looking back at your life now, what lessons have you learned from all the relationships you've had? Romantic, business, academic, school?
Powerful question. Very powerful question. I would say here, now, lesson number one would be real and show up truthfully yourself. And the reason why it's a lesson, because again, based on my childhood traumas, I was always afraid to speak up and show up in the true power of who I was and the true character of who I was. So as a result, of course, I was hiding some parts of me, and then eventually my partners would find out them and be like, oh, I never knew you were like that. Or I was not expecting this from you. I thought you were that, but you are this. So what I learned is show up for real. Because the reality is, if they won't like you who are you for real, good. That's fantastic news, because that means you can move on quicker. You don't have to waste with them 3-4 years of your lifetime, only then to move on to the next partner. Okay? But second reason also why to show up for real is because it's so much easier. The true freedom lies in you showing up and who you are. Because then you don't have to remember what you said, what you haven't said. You don't have to remember what mask you're wearing with these people or with those people, right? You just show up for yourself. And another truth about this is, when you hide something about yourself, there is a reason why you hide it. And if you hide something about yourself, work on it. For example, one of my previous partners, my ex-fiance actually, I did not know that that person was addicted to drinking until the day we moved in together. And I started noticing every single day there's a bottle of wine drunk by himself and a couple of beers from around about 3 p.m. onwards. I couldn't know that, because before we were just dating. We would just go out and spend a weekend together, spend the night together, go for a dinner, go to cinema, whatever. You don't see this daily behavior. Once I recognize that he is literally drinking from 3 p.m., 4 p.m. the latest, couple of beers, and then watching television, movie after movie, whilst having a bottle of wine, complaining to me why I'm not drinking with him. I was like, whoa, Could you please tell me where is your twin brother whom I was dating all this time? Because this is not the person I was moving in together, right? So here's the thing. If you would tell me that he drinks a bottle of wine a day and a couple of beers every day in front of television, I would say, good for you. But sorry, I cannot be with you. No judgment. You do whatever you want with your life, but why would I be with you? I don't want to be with a person who has that lifestyle. That's not who I am, right? Do whatever you want, just not with me, right? Same way, if I would show up myself as spiritual person before, I would not surprise my partners by, oh, why now suddenly I need some time for meditation? So like, well, you were never meditating before. I was. It's just because we were not living together before. I was doing it at my own timing, but now we live together. So of course I need to have my timing within our timing, right? But if I would tell them, if I would show that side of me that I need my own time for meditations, for journaling and stuff like that, if I would not hide it from them, probably they'll be okay. And if they'll be not okay, that's also fine, because there is somebody in the world that would be okay. Like my husband, for example. Is he meditating with me every single time? No, maybe every 10th time. But I love my meditations and he respects that. And he had nothing against that, because I told him from day one, I'm into meditations. And I was waiting for this reaction. He would say, oh, no, that means we cannot be together. He was like, okay. Like, oh, he's okay with that, right? You know what I mean? Because when you show up for real, other people just accept you who you are. If they like it, if they don't, just move on and find somebody else. There are 8 billion people in the world. So that's an important lesson which I learned. It's about showing up powerfully, who you are, showing your real side without hiding, because whatever you're hiding, you got to work on that. Simple as that.
And one final question for you, Olga. Name one relationship you'd like to have again, given another chance. And what would you do differently this time around?
Across all my relationships or my latest one?
I'll just name one relationship you'd like to have again, given a chance. And what would you do differently this time around? Just one person.
So I will start with my latest one, because there's no point to go through all of them. I would trust more myself in order to see those red flags and point them out. Because have there been red flags in terms of fidelity of my, at the time, fiance, not husband? Of course there were, but I chose not to believe them. I chose to ignore them. So, but still, would I get married to him? Would I still go through the same experience? Yes, John, because that made me a lot better person. That made me to be able to help those people, particular women with whom I work now through my infidelity course, to empower them and help them heal and overcome this infidelity trauma. But if not my direct experience with my husband, I'll be still helping couples to deal with that. But I would never create that course. And I would never have so much transformation happening right in front of me, if not that direct experience. So would I trust myself more with paying attention to red flags? I would absolutely. But does it mean I would not get married to my husband? No. I still would like to get married to him, and I still would want to go through everything I went with him, even though it was mega painful. But hey, the person I'm now is just phenomenal comparing to the person who I was before. So yeah, answering your question, I would trust myself more, but I still would go through the same experience again.
This has been a fascinating conversation today, Olga. I'd like to thank you for your time, and you've given a huge amount of information about a whole strata of relationships today, from the relationship with your granny, your mom, your brother and sisters, your first husband, and your current husband. So thank you for your time.
It is an absolute pleasure, John, and thank you so much for being such a great listener and such a fantastic interviewer. It was a great pleasure being back to your show again.
I've been raped many times. The 13 one was the first one. You know, there's been lots of different other sexual abuses and traumas. I've got all this shame and self-hatred inside of me, and I had to numb it out with alcohol. And so by 22, I needed to numb out all of this pain. And I started taking heroin. At first, you know, you think, oh, this isn't going to get me. I can control this. But it gives you a lot of false hope and energy and power at first. But then after a few months, you're having to increase your dosage because it's a physical addiction. And, you know, by the end of my addiction, my drug habit was about £250 a day.